Okay, so let's talk about this. The pandemic might feel like it's in the rearview mirror for a lot of us, but there's this huge lingering question for the millions of people who've actually had COVID-19. We got through the sickness, but what did it leave behind? Well, today we're going to dig into a massive global study that tried to find some real answers. And this is the question, right? This is at the heart of everything. Beyond the cough, beyond the fever, what are the lasting impacts? For so many survivors, that feeling of being back to normal has been just out of reach. And scientists have been racing to figure out exactly why. And this all falls under the umbrella of what we now call long COVID. It's this whole collection of symptoms that can stick around for months, sometimes even longer, well after you're not contagious anymore. And the study we're talking about, it digs into one of the most fundamental and kind of invisible parts of it. To get a sense of the scale we're dealing with, just look at this number. The World Health Organization estimates there are almost 800 million COVID-19 survivors across the globe. That is a massive population of people who could be at risk for long-term issues we're just now starting to get a handle on. Now, here's the crucial shift in thinking. We've learned that COVID isn't just a respiratory thing. For a long time, we thought, oh, it's about the lungs. But it turns out the virus can impact our entire vascular system, that whole highway of blood vessels running through our bodies. And that realization, well, it changes everything. So, how in the world do you measure that kind of damage? How do you see it? Well, this is where the scientific detective work really kicks in. Let's take a look at the incredible international effort that was set up to find some solid answers. It's called the CARTESIAN study. And listen, this was not some small local project. The CARTESIAN study was enormous. We're talking 34 different centers in 16 countries. The researchers compared 4 groups of people, a group that never had COVID, and then 3 groups of survivors, those who had it mildly at home, those who were hospitalized, and those who ended up in the ICU. And they were all looking for one specific thing, something called arterial stiffness. And that brings us to this really fascinating idea called vascular aging. It's a simple concept, but it's super powerful. The age on your driver's license, that's one thing. But the age of your blood vessels, that could be telling a completely different story about your actual biological health. So what exactly is arterial stiffness? Okay, think about a garden hose. A brand new one is flexible, it's elastic, water flows right through it, no problem. But an old hose that's been sitting in the sun for years, it gets stiff, brittle, it just can't handle the pressure as well. Our arteries work the same way. When they're healthy, they're supple. When they're not, they get rigid, and that puts a ton of extra strain on your heart. And scientists measure this using something called pulse wave velocity. All right, so the researchers have all this data from thousands of people all over the world. They crunch the numbers, and what they find is not at all what anyone expected. Seriously, let's get to the results because there's a huge twist in this story. The first big picture finding was pretty clear. Even after they accounted for all the usual risk factors, age, smoking, blood pressure, all that stuff, people who'd had COVID showed signs of having stiffer arteries. It looked like their vascular age was speeding up. And this is a huge but. When the scientists started digging into the details, they realized that overall trend wasn't the real story. It turned out that this accelerated aging, it wasn't happening to everyone. It was almost entirely concentrated in just 1/2 of the population. And here it is. Get this. The accelerated vascular aging was significant only in women. Women who'd had COVID, it didn't even matter how sick they were, showed way stiffer arteries compared to women who'd never been infected. And for the men, there was no statistically significant difference at all. Wild, right? And for women, it turns out how sick they got made a huge difference. You can see it right here. Even a mild case, one that didn't require a hospital stay, was linked to stiffer arteries. But the effect got progressively worse for those who were hospitalized, and it was off the charts for women who had to go to the ICU. Let's just pull out the most dramatic number from the whole study. For women who were treated in the ICU, their pulse wave velocity, that measurement of how stiff their arteries were, was on average 1.09 meters per second higher than women who never got sick. That is a massive jump. But what does a number like that even mean in the real world? Well, the study's authors translated it for us. That massive jump in stiffness is basically like adding 7.5 years of aging onto their vascular system. So a severe COVID infection literally fast-forwarded their vascular clock by almost a decade. That is just wow. So, Of course, this leads to the biggest, most important question of all. Is this damage permanent? I mean, are these women just stuck with arteries that are years older than they should be? Well, the researchers wanted to know that too. So they followed up with everyone a year later, and they found something pretty hopeful. The group that never had COVID, their arteries got a tiny bit stiffer, which is just normal aging. But the COVID survivors, their arteries had either stopped getting worse or had actually started to improve. This suggests the damage might not be forever and could be at least partially reversible.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. After going through this mountain of data from all over the world, what are the big takeaways? What do we know now that we didn't know before?
So for women specifically, a few really clear things emerged. First, if they had those persistent, long COVID symptoms, it was tied to stiffer arteries. But on the flip side, being vaccinated was linked to healthier, less stiff arteries. And importantly, this whole effect was there even in mild cases, not just the really severe ones. And maybe best of all, there's that glimmer of hope that the body can heal over time.
So if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this. We have to stop thinking of COVID-19 as just a lung disease. It's not. Its reach extends through the entire circulatory system, and that has huge implications for long-term health, especially, it seems, for women.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful thought. For the hundreds of millions of women out there who've survived COVID-19, maybe the word recovered isn't quite right. The real question this study forces us all to ask is, how has this infection fundamentally reset their long-term cardiovascular health clock? And what are we going to do about it now?